When you are the mayor of a city, you get the calls. The buck stops with you. They call you when there's a snowstorm. They call you when a water main breaks. They also call you, God forbid, when a mass shooting erupts in your downtown on a summer weekend night and 9 people are killed almost in an instant. And your city goes from being familiar, vibrant Dayton, Ohio, to a city that is reeling, that is grieving, that is angry. Dayton Mayor Nan Whaley is a Democrat. She has been outspoken about the politics that led to this moment and the politics that have followed. She has called the president unhelpful on gun policy and said his rhetoric has been painful for many in her community. But nevertheless, Mayor Whaley did meet with the president earlier today on his visit to her city. The mayor met with the president along with Ohio's Democratic U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown. Later, the mayor described the visit for reporters.
Mayor, how would you characterize your conversation with the president? Do you feel like he was hearing you?
I think he heard me. I don't know if he will take action. I'm hoping for the people of Dayton that he does. But we, both the senator and I spoke very directly what we've been saying the whole time about the need for common sense gun legislation.
Who knows why, but apparently those remarks from the mayor did not meet with the president's expectations for what he wanted said about him after he left Dayton. On his way to the next city that was reeling from a mass shooting, on his way to El Paso, the president, apropos of nothing, went online to accuse Mayor Whaley and Senator Brown of totally representing what happened during his Dayton visit. And then he slagged off both of them for it's not totally clear what. The president then kept up that criticism inexplicably, even after he arrived in El Paso, going back to it again, unprompted, with reporters in Texas. So why is this happening? This is just what it's like now, but you can add to the president's accomplishments today his unsolicited insults and invective for the mayor of a city that just suffered a massacre and to whom he was supposedly offering the federal government's help and assistance today. Joining us now is Nan Whaley. She's the mayor of Dayton. Madam Mayor, thank you very much for making time for us. I'm sure this has just been a hell of a day.
It's been a day, Rachel. Thank you.
Yeah. First of all, let me just ask how you're doing, how you assess as its leader, how Dayton is doing, whether Dayton has what it needs now, 3 days out now from the shootings.
Well, I think Dayton is an amazing city. I know I'm biased as its mayor, but it has a lot of grit and resilience. And, Sunday evening we had a vigil on the streets of the Oregon District where the shootings happened, and it was thousands and thousands of people coming together. They were grieving. There was compassion, there was hugging, there was tears, and there was anger. And, really the community shouted, do something, pretty organically. And it moved the governor, who is a Republican here, Governor Mike DeWine, to take action on some gun legislation here in the state. Frankly, I was hoping that that would be the same case when the president came here today, but I don't get the sense that that's going to happen.
When the president was in Dayton today, there is some ambiguity as to what his exact itinerary would be, where he would show up, whether the public would see him and he'd see the public. And you suggested today in your remarks that maybe it was a good thing that the president didn't go specifically to the Oregon District, to the site of where the shootings happened, and where that vigil was with that powerful moment with Governor DeWine. Mm-hmm. Why did you think it was probably a good thing on balance that the president didn't do that today?
Well, even while the president was at the hospital today meeting victims and first responders, the tension in the Oregon District was already very high. And just imagining the president in that with already the tension between both supporters and folks that are opposed to the president, I think would be very difficult. Our community is on tender hooks. The minute that the president announced he was coming to Dayton, people had a lot of opinions. And it's kind of sad, frankly. Before the president's announcement on Tuesday, there was a real sense of togetherness. But I think because of his rhetoric over the past 3 years and just hyper-partisan nature, just him announcing has really put the community on edge. And, it was a little tough even in the Oregon District while he was in the city, even though he wasn't at the Oregon District.
And when you say it's a little tough, do you mean that you were worried about people fighting or there being conflict or some sort of disorder?
Sure. We didn't have any arrests or anything like that, but, some of my city commissioners were actually in the Oregon district de-escalating some of the disagreements between pro and anti-Trump groups. And I think that's what is so tough about this president, is because his rhetoric is so hot. In situations where we've seen the community come together, the community can get so hyper-partisan and nationalized because of the president's actions.
It's just striking for me to hear that what you're describing in terms of the city being unified and the community being unified, and really the country being unified in support of Dayton in the immediate aftermath of what happened, and you describing that real U-turn where you have to worry about this incredible conflict all around the issue of the president and his behavior, the way that his politics inflect or don't these mass shootings. National leadership should hopefully do the opposite, right? National leadership should hopefully, and local leadership even, should hopefully be able to take zones of conflict and zones of consternation and help people see common ground and bring themselves together. I wonder, seeing this happening in your city over the last few days, if you have ideas for how to get past that, to sort of either smooth over or re-knit the community together, even as you're seeing these rifts.
I think I will be fine now that the president has left. We've seen some really great movement that's been very bipartisan effort around some common sense gun legislation here in Dayton and across the state. One example is the community, really, chanting to Governor DeWine Sunday night, do something. And on Tuesday, the governor does something. We also saw our Congressman Mike Turner, a Republican, calling for an assault weapons ban, a man who had a 93% NRA record, really seeing what the community was going through. So, I'm very hopeful about that, those folks that are, recognizing that this is really a bipartisan issue. In the state of Ohio, background checks are supported by 90% of Ohioans. So, assault weapons ban supported by the vast majority of Ohioans. And, when you have an issue like this in your community, and we're the 250th city that's had a mass shooting since January 1, it's really happening to everybody. And so I do think there's pieces, if we can really stitch together and get past some of this hyper-partisan rhetoric, that we can actually move ourselves forward. And we're seeing some of that in the State House and here locally. And that makes me hopeful. The presidential visit, while the victims were super excited to see him, the first responders were grateful, it was hard on the community at large because everybody has a very, very strong opinion, either positive or negative, about the president.
Nan Whaley, Mayor of Dayton, Ohio, I really thank you for your time tonight. I know there's a lot of demands on your time. Please stay in touch. Keep us apprised as your city recovers. To the extent that you guys need national attention to things and national resources, keep us on your Rolodex.
We sure will, Rachel. Thanks
you very much. All right. Coming up, we heard from a couple of the leading Democratic candidates for president today on this crisis, on the roots of this crisis in our country, about what ought to be done about it. This was some pretty striking stuff. A lot of people are really rising to the moment. Stay with us. That's next.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.